Well, yes, said to welcome in all of you who may be tuning in. And for this video, I thought we would have a look at this. I'm going to turn the light on actually just a little bit so you can see. This is the Anthologion from St. Ignatius Orthodox Press. Okay. And it strikes me that this is kind of a potentially disastrous way of approaching doing one of these. I don't have notes. I'm going off the cuff. But nonetheless, I thought some of you might want to see this book from kind of a more neutral perspective. As many of you may know, I made a pretty, I don't know, spicy video about the Anthologion a few years ago where I talked about sort of the limitations of the Anthologion in Orthodox practice. And I noted a few things, one of which was the issue with, I just want to make sure we're getting a good sound. Okay. So one of the issues that I noted with the original Anthologion, which I have here, was that it was kind of very incomplete. It essentially consisted of an octoikos, an incomplete horologion, a general meneon, and one of the interesting thing about the general meneon is that it's not something that's generally used, especially in the Greek tradition, just because the meneon itself is so extensive. That, in my opinion, the Anthologion was kind of out of its depth. It wasn't really something that I could recommend for everybody. And I also talked about how, in the Eastern tradition, doing all of the hours might or might not be all that useful. Well, then comes along the third edition. You can see it is much, much thicker than the original. It's the same height though, but it is a lot thicker. Two editions really change the analysis on this Anthologion. One, we'll open it up here so that you can see. One is that it contains the entire Holy Psalter. This is in the St. Ignatius Orthodox Press translation, which is essentially the same as the Holy Psalter that they have also published. The only difference is that this book lacks the devotional troparia and prayers that accompany the standalone volume. I really like the standalone volume. I think it's a very useful prayer book, but nonetheless, this one has a complete Psalter in it, which is very useful if you intend to recite the office in a way that would involve reciting the Psalter. Now, of course, in all actuality, I kind of think this is in my previous video, I talked about how I thought, a Psalter or a Bible or something would be a necessary appendix to the Anthologion. I've kind of thought more about that, and the only issue I have with including a Psalter in this is it would have been a lot better, I think, to just include more of the meneon, because at least as far as parish practice goes, oftentimes those the Psalter portions are omitted. So it's kind of questionable how useful having a full Psalter would be. Nonetheless, it is nice having it. The second thing, and this I think is a really good addition, and that is that they include the full Festal Maneon. So let's just have a look, and I'm going to have to turn this around here for a second. Let's just have a look at one of the most recent feasts, which is the Feast of the Holy Cross. Exaltation of the Cross. Yeah, my ribbon's already there. So this has the full Festal Maneon. I have found that this can be a little bit confusing because sometimes it doesn't have sort of everything just right there. It kind of assumes that you've got the rest of the Festal Maneon. But this is, or not the rest of the Festal Maneon, but the rest of the Maneon to refer to. But nonetheless, it does have much more of the text. And I really like this because this increases to me one of the best uses for an Anthologion. And that would be if you were to attend a welcome in. I see that we have a new viewer. Let me know in the comment box if you can hear me okay. I sure would appreciate it. We're having a look at the 3rd edition of the Anthologion. So what I was saying was that having the Festal Maneon and having some more selections from the texts of the various services adds to the usefulness of this book in one, really particular way. And that is if you were to attend a parish, or maybe whether it was here or whether it was overseas, if you were to attend a parish that primarily served the liturgy in a different language, such as Slavonic or Greek, it might not be exactly what they were reading from the chant stand, but it'd be pretty close if you had this book. And nonetheless, you could get a lot out of attending the services by, sort of being able to follow along in this book and having a translation that you could use. And that is something that they have greatly improved the utility of this book on. Also, the translations at the end of the book of the occasional prayers have been smoothed out and made a lot more usable. And frankly, the Anthologion, while I don't say the offices all that much anymore altogether, I do use the Anthologion a lot for my daily prayers, especially small compline, and especially for Orthros and Vespers when I can't get to church. So that sort of use has made this volume really practical. Of course, there's always that question, well, what if they included less of the daily offices and just had, Vespers and Orthros, small compline, a smaller selection of offices and just more proper material that you might run into in a parish. And I think that's an interesting thought experiment to have as to what kind of Anthologion you could put together. But nonetheless, as an aid to following along with the services, if the services are in a different language, as an aid to home prayer, it's not bad. I mean, as far as things go, and especially with the addition of the Festal Maneon, I think it comes out to be really useful. Another thing that I think is really nice, it's added the mid hours of the Lenten offices. So now you have those completely laid out. Of course, these are omitted in local practice on several occasions. So oftentimes they aren't completely performed. One thing I think that it's very possible to do is to take the Eastern Rite rubrics a bit too seriously. in that oftentimes they will omit things that you think are pretty clearly laid out there to be followed. But nonetheless, in terms of actual practice, they're often omitted or abbreviated, which makes a book like this even possible, those sort of abbreviations. So let's do a couple of comparisons. The book that I have that's sort of most comparable in size is actually this Tyndale giant print compact edition of the Bible. So if you might throw this in your backpack, then you could probably throw this in there as well. I get a lot of interesting feedback for my use of the NLT. It's an okay translation as far as things go. If you're wanting a more loose translation, one that, although loose, nonetheless tries to reflect the underlying language fairly well, I do find that sometimes I can do a little bit of a better job paraphrasing than what they can with just my little bit of Greek knowledge. But nonetheless, the NLT is a pretty good read. I've been reading through it for quite a few months now, just as a devotional reading. And here's a comparison with the original. You can see it is a lot thicker. And if you have the original Anthologion, you won't have the Festal Meneon out of here, but you can get a lot of the benefit of the new edition if you buy St. Ignatius Orthodox Press's new guide that basically has the calendar that they have used in this edition. That's probably something worth showing. I'll pull this up. So they've revised their presentation of the calendar to have essentially all of the daily commemorations in there. And they've made more of a distinction between the different classes of saints. And with those additional distinctions, your Anthologion office comes a lot closer to what parish practice might be. So, for example, noting when the hymns for feasts are doubled or not. Let's see, what other book could I compare it to? We've got one edition of the Breviarium Romanum. This is from Nova et Vetera Press. It's completely in Latin. And you can see that the Breviarium Romanum is a thinner book. That's mainly due to the quality of the paper. This book has thicker paper than the Breviarium does. But it doesn't. I think this book has something like it has 1,200 pages, 1,230 pages, something like that. And well, this Breviarium has much more than that, somewhere in the range of probably 1,600 pages. Oh, there's a little crease there. That has happened. It's a shame. But yeah, the Breviarium Romanum, and of course it's 2 volumes, so overall it has about 3,000 pages, taking the two together. And then you really do have the complete Roman office in about 3,000 small pages. And I still think that, an Anthologion is yet to be produced that can really come close to the Breviarium Romanum in terms of completeness. And I think that's a much different project. I think, imagining a book where you had, say, just 3 months of the Meneon where you omitted the canons, so you were just doing the Katavasia or the odes, and you omitted the general Meneon, and you included the Octoekos and the Triodion and all of those in their appropriate seasonal spot. I think it'd be possible to get a more complete Anthologion in, say, 4 volumes with about 2,000 to 3,000 pages each. And of course, that would have to be on like Bible paper, and they'd all each be about this size, and it would be a very expensive undertaking. But nonetheless, I think it would be a valuable thing for a lot of people. But still, this volume is a good step in the right direction. I'm hoping that they continue this project and they continue to develop it and make it even more usable. One thing that I will say, one criticism that remains of the Anthologion project, the translations are from the late Ephraim Lash, and he was a good translator. He had a very, I think, innate sense of the meaning of the underlying texts. But his translations are not musical translations, meaning that you cannot use this book to chant the offices in Byzantine chant according to their authentic tones. And in any case, this book does not note the special melodies or the ophthomela that are applicable to each hymn. So you can't really use this for the Byzantine tones, except perhaps the simple reciting tones that are sometimes used. But then, you lose the choral aspect of chanting. So the book is not really usable for that purpose. Now, I mean, any port in a storm, if you had to carry out the offices for a particular church, you could use this book to kind of get pretty close. And then I suppose you would, sing recto tono with the hymns, or you might even recite them, or you might use the Russian tones or the simplified Byzantine tones. But nonetheless, it doesn't really lend itself to authentic Byzantine chant in most instances. So that's one weird thing. Another is that it doesn't use the term Theotokos, which in America we're very used to for referring to the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Theotokos. This book uses the Mother of God. It doesn't even use the God Bearer or the Birth Giver of God, which is another possible translation of Theotokos. So, those are a couple of things that, I would like to see changed. When I recite anything from this book, I usually just say Theotokos whenever it says Mother of God, unless my own Antiochian translation says Mother of God. And they are really two different terms, in Greek. I believe it's imiter tuteu for the Mother of God versus Theotokos for the God bearer. But anyway, that's just a pet peeve of mine. Well, thank you for tuning into this live stream. I hope that the audio came out okay, and I appreciate all of you who tuned in, and I hope that you enjoyed my review of the third edition of the Anthologion. How about I stay on for another, 2 or 3 minutes, and if any of you have any questions about the Anthologion or about any of the books that I've talked about. I talked about the Breviarium Romanum a little bit. I talked about the first edition. Oh, I even talked about the New Living Translation of the Bible. So I'll stay on for 5 minutes or so if anyone has any questions. Be happy to answer those. You can just put them in the chat box over there. And if not, that's okay too. Excellent. I just tuned in. I have the Anthologion, but I've never used it. Have you checked the small guidebook that St. Ignatius Press published? Yeah, I just talked about that. I haven't checked it out personally, so I don't own it. But what I do know is that if you have the first edition of the Anthologion, the guidebook has the complete calendar from the third edition, which is a lot better. It notes like when the hymns need to be doubled, when you're going to have sung lauds versus recited lauds at feast. And I mean, it sounds really useful. And I still use the little one sometimes just because it is littler. So I have thought about getting it, but I can't quite justify buying another book at this point. Since I do have both, I can always just look it up in here in the morning. Someone else, George also mentioned I have the latest one, the traditional in goatskin. I was really torn about the traditional language one because it seemed really neat, but I was hoping they would just go with, an established text for the traditional language, but I understand the licensing would have made it really difficult. Okay, do I have the NLT Catholic edition? Any thoughts? I have a ton of thoughts about the NLT Catholic edition, if you are willing to hear them, Orthodox Philip. Here's the deal. So first of all, I want to show you something. This is a newer edition of the NLT. And if I can get the camera to focus in on it, you'll notice that, let's see if I can get this. You'll notice that at the copyright page of this edition, I don't know if it'll focus. Maybe, okay. It tells you the copyright edition. So it says 1996, 2004, and then 2015. Now that's what I find really interesting. So when they produced the New Living Translation Catholic edition, in order to get the Catholic Church's approval, they basically had to take the text to the Indian Conference of Catholic Bishops because, frankly, the American bishops didn't want any more competition to the New American Bible because they have the rights to it and they get money, right? But nonetheless, so they went to the Indian conference, which didn't care about the Americans making money. And they presented the text to them, and the Indian bishops reviewed the text and tried to make it a little more accurate to the underlying Greek and Hebrew texts that are the basis for the NLT. So they made some subtle suggestions. What I find really interesting is that Tyndale thought that their suggestions were really good and incorporated them into the main version of the New Living Translation. So every New Living Translation that has a copyright of 2015 and afterwards incorporates the changes made for the New Living Translation Catholic Edition. So this is essentially the New Living Translation Catholic Edition minus the additional Catholic books, or, you know, in our case, the additional Orthodox books. I strongly recommend it, actually. I think it's a good read. I do think that there are times that the New Living Translation is clearly thinking about the English version of the text, like a previous traditional English version of the text. And they have, and because they're thinking about that, their paraphrase is a little skewed from the underlying language. So sometimes I think they're not exactly paraphrasing the Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic text, they're paraphrasing a prior version of the Bible. So there's occasions where I think that that is still slipping in, even though on the whole, this is a direct translation from the texts. Sometimes I think their paraphrases are just not quite accurate to the underlying language, which makes sense. But nothing's perfect. I forget, there was a verse that I recently pulled out of here. And I can't remember what it was. I think it was from Romans. Well, I don't remember. But anyway, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I made a post about it, which is really funny. But it on another platform. But nonetheless, it was very clear that they had relied on like the King James Version translation, but they weren't understanding what the King James Version was trying to get at. And then they ignored the actual Greek. So anyway, just a thought. Yeah, anyway, that's about the New Living Translation. I enjoy reading it. I kind of want to check out the New English Translation and the World English Bible next, when I finish these. And then, of course, you know, by the time I read, I don't know, one or two other versions of the Bible, I figure we might have the new Bible from New Rome Press. Maybe 2 or 3 is being optimistic. Maybe 3 or 4. One of the two. It's kind of been in the works for a long time. Next question. What do you like or not like about the Lexham English Septuagint? I don't have a lot of experience with the Lexham English Septuagint. I've always used the Brenton Septuagint, not because I love the translation, but because it has the Greek text parallel to it. So I like to be able to check the Greek text. As with any Septuagint, there is always the question of what is the underlying version of the Septuagint, because some people say that the Orthodox Church is a Septuagint only church, right? Like you got the Catholic, you've got the Protestants that are KJV only, and you've got the Orthodox that are Septuagint only for the Old Testament. But the issue, of course, is that there is no single Septuagint text. The one that is the most commonly used is based on the Codex Sinaiticus. And the Codex Sinaiticus follows a textual type in the New Testament and partially in the Old Testament that virtually no Orthodox Church uses anymore. And so the underlying Old Testament Septuagint text, I think it does vary amongst Orthodox sources. And the Codex Sinaiticus is a perfectly Orthodox source, but nonetheless, it's worth sort of pointing out that these that at the same time the Hebrew texts that we have, those also vary. If you take seriously the variations in the Hebrew texts and the Dead Sea Scrolls and all of those sorts of things. So I don't know. I'm a little more of an eclecticist, not because I think that that's the best way to reconstruct the original text, but it's the best way to get a readable text. So that doesn't really answer your question about the Lexham English Septuagint, but it's one reason I'm kind of hesitant on sort of affording a particular version of the Septuagint particular credence. From what I understand, the Lexham English Septuagint is, if I recall, roughly based, I believe, on the New Revised Standard Version. Is that it, or is that the NETS? Okay, I can't remember which one it was. I think that may be the NETS. But in any case, useful translation, and I think it's bound to be sort of the modern version of the Septuagint for our generation. All right. Any other questions about the new 3rd edition Anthologion? I'm happy to thumb through books with you. That's the NETS? Okay. Okay. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience with the Lexham English Septuagint. Like I said, I always have used the Brenton and or on occasion the Orthodox Study Bible Septuagint. Based on Codex Vaticanus. Okay. Yeah, I'll be interested to see the Bible that New Rome Press produces. I'm really hoping it comes out in time for Christmas or something, so that I can justify buying it for myself. All right. Question. It'll be interesting to see if, like, so y'all know, right, that the Anthologion and the New Rome Press translations, if you like New Rome Press translations, they are they actually have a similar sort of genesis, although they're basically two branches of the same source. The Anthologion is based on Ephraim Lash's translations, which are very popular over in Great Britain. And so are the New Rome Press translations. It's just that these have been edited by the editors of at St. Ignatius Orthodox Press, and the New Rome Press translations have been edited by Father Michael Monos? Yeah, the New Rome Press's Bible, Old Testament, is the Lexham English Septuagint. That's what concerns me a bit. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's the same with the Eastern Orthodox Bible New Testament right. That's based on the World English Bible, and at times it's pretty clumsy. I mean, it's difficult for me to see, even though they have produced some lovely miniature liturgical books from St. Ignatius Orthodox Press in the Eastern Orthodox Bible. It is difficult for me. It's difficult for me to imagine those texts becoming the common ones for liturgical use. I have trouble seeing it, just because some of them are so unique. I get what they're trying to do with some of them, like for example when they translate proskuneo as to show adoration towards, or that sort of thing. That's not what that means, right? First of all, that's a figurative translation. So so I don't know. I'm on the fence with the Eastern Orthodox Bible. And then, to just add to it a completely different translation, it seems a little clumsy to me. I would rather just take a good translation and add back in the Orthodox books, that have been taken out in the same style or in the same translation, and call it an Orthodox Bible. But I will show you, and I had this on my channel earlier. This is a Bible that was officially approved by the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of Thyatira in Great Britain back in the 70s. This is one of my favorite Bibles that I own. And this is the Common Bible. I have to keep it in the case because unfortunately there's a name on there. These faux leather covers are kind of brittle. But you can see this is the Revised Standard Version. The Revised Standard Version was pretty much the adopted translation for the Orthodox Church for years. And for a long time, the translations of the Psalms that were used liturgically in the OCA and even in some Antiochian parishes were from the Revised Standard Version. It is still true that many altar gospel books in the Orthodox Church are based on the Revised Standard Version. So I'm kind of at a loss. I really think we should, maybe do a reboot of the Revised Standard Version. There's the Revised Standard Version Catholic edition. It would be nice to have a Revised Standard Version Orthodox edition. Maybe fix up. If I had my perfect world, what we would do is we would just literally take the RSV, and then, for example, everybody knows what the RSV is infamous for, right? Isaiah. What is the scripture that I'm thinking of? What is the verse number? I can never remember. Is it 14? Well, you all know what it's famous for. Of translating the verse behold, a virgin shall conceive. It translated it as behold, a young woman shall conceive. But in the note, it says other translate, or the Greek says virgin, right? And so I've always thought, okay, let's just take the RSV, remove the these and thys, because the RSV's use of the and these and thys really doesn't make any sense. So remove any leftover vestigial these and thys, unless we just want to make the whole thing these and thys. But nonetheless, do that, and then take any translation from the Greek out of the footnote, put it into the main text, and then take the other one and put it in the footnote, and then call it a day. And use the expanded Apocrypha, so it's got all the Orthodox books in it. So that's my idea, if I could have my perfect RSV. And in the New Testament, you don't really need to do anything, I don't think. Have you read the Catholic Standard Version? The Catholic Standard, I got and read Matthew, and it felt like a nice modern translation, but I didn't go too deep comparing it to other versions. The Catholic Standard Version, I don't know the Catholic Standard Version. Are you talking about the Revised Standard Version Catholic edition, perhaps? Or Second Catholic edition? I'll let you put in the comments what you're referring to. I know the New American Bible is not as bad as people think. The notes are just bad, but if you're Orthodox and you're using, say, the New Oxford Annotated Bible. Oh, okay, a new CSV. Okay, no, I haven't read it. I have not read it. But yeah, if you're Orthodox and you're reading the New Oxford Annotated Bible notes, you'll be as equally scandalized as if you read the read the New American Bible notes. They're virtually the same in their opinions, by the way, which should tell you something. But as far as Catholic versions, I don't know. I tell Orthodox people to read Catholic versions a lot because they have most of the books, right? And the other ones, I mean, you should read them, but we don't read them all that often in the Orthodox Church, so it's probably, it's more complete than, say, the King James Version with Apocrypha. And the King James Version Apocrypha is very inaccurate. That's one thing I would point out, is that the King James Version Apocrypha, by the admission of the translators, was rushed. And I find that the King James Version Apocrypha is usually inaccurate to the underlying language, as compared to, say, the Brenton translation, or indeed more modern Catholic and ecumenical translations. But I'll look forward to checking out the Catholic Standard Version. All right, y'all. Well, it is late. I'd probably better be going to bed because I have a feeling that my daughter is going to go to sleep, or my daughter, who has already gone to sleep, is going to wake up early in the morning, whether I do or not. So, in any case, Anthologion, 3rd edition. Check it out. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Maybe other people can to the recorded video. And I look forward to reaching out to all of you again. Thanks. Have a good night.